Good afternoon, all. On behalf of Professional Development Committee, I welcome you all for today's Navratri 4th session. Today, our speaker is CMA Dr. Samvedi Rane. I request Arpita ma'am to kindly introduce.
Good afternoon. A very good afternoon, everyone. On the occasion of 4th day of Navratri celebration, I, CMA Arpita, coordinator, welcome you on for the program on behalf of WRC team. I extend heartfelt gratitude to WRC team members and the staff for arranging this session. Thank you all the attendees for your presence and valuable participation. Thank you, Samvedi ma'am, for her invaluable presence. The 4th day of Navratri is dedicated to goddess Kushmanda, the creator of universe. Worshipping her while wearing orange on this day is believed to bestow qualities of warmth, energetic, youthful, and positivity upon us. Our speaker, Samvedi Rane, Dr. Samvedi Rane, is a young, energetic, dynamic lady. She is also a managing committee member of Aurangabad chapter, currently holding position of secretary, a leading CMA in field of education. Dr. Samvedi Rane is currently working as head of admissions, associate professor at Nath School of Business and Technology in Chhatrapati Sambhajinagar. With over 7 years of experience in academics, she is a seasoned educator and leading in academics, having completed her PhD in corporate governance practices in Indian PSUs. Samvedi's research interests span corporate governance, ESG, and finance, with a focus on cutting-edge areas such as fintech and future of accounting. Alongside an impressive academic background, Samvedi serves as an independent director on boards of BSE-listed companies. Samvedi is a fellow member of both Institute of Cost Accountants of India and Company Secretaries of India, a certified independent director, and recently earned certification as an impact leader from IICA. This unique blend of academic and corporate experience positions Samvedi as a key contributor to research, teaching, and industry collaboration. I would like to invite Samvedi Rane for today's session. Let's welcome this energetic lady on our forum. I request Dr. Samvedi to please take over the session.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. Good evening, all of you. I would like to just wish everyone on the occasion of Navratri, and I will just start with my presentation. So I'll just share my screen, and please do let me know if it is visible to all of you. Is the screen visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay. So today, when we're talking about Navratri and we're celebrating women and women empowerment and trying to work towards empowerment, true empowerment actually comes from the fact that we allow women to take up positions, take up the lead roles, take up the reins of the organization. And my area of interest in terms of research has been corporate governance. So when we usually talk about governance, it is basically how we do things and what we do in an organization to ensure that the organization is doing what is right, not just for the organization, but for the entire society. And today we live in a world which is highly volatile, highly dynamic, and changing continuously. And there are infinite changes which have taken place in the last 2 odd years with AI coming up. And there are many applications that we have found for technology. But where we are struggling is the fact that most of the times when we talk about women empowerment and the role of women in corporate, those roles are mainly created on paper for compliance or for the sake of showing that there is diversity or inclusion. But in reality, these things are not being implemented. The kind of practices which should be there are not there. But even in this, there are some women who have taken the lead, who have taken the ropes and shown the world that there can be wonders created by women if they are allowed or if they've given the opportunity and if they get the right kind of support. So today I'm going to talk about empowerment through governance and how empowering women can actually help in better corporate governance and overall better care for the society, for the organization, and benefits to all the stakeholders. So this particular concept of corporate governance, this came out because there were so many different issues that were cropping up, and many legislations came out, many recommendations also came out, that diversity in terms of the governance structure of the organization would lead to better accountability, better transparency, better decision making, and the diversity in terms of the people who are on the board would lead to diversity in perspectives and overall better responses when it comes to deciding how the organization should do things. But even though there are rules or practices which are being set up today, the way the rules and practices are being set up, many of them, as I mentioned, they are simply for the sake of showing the world. But when these rules are followed in spirit, when the law of the land becomes a practice, becomes an important aspect or important part of how we work or how we function, it can genuinely lead to a better perspective being brought to the table, because there are diverse experiences that we all have as individuals, and those insights can lead to deeper thinking and strategic planning being brought into an organization. And this empowerment that I'm talking about, which comes through governance or which can come through governance, can come because of the fact that when women are given leadership roles, they can shape the organization in a much better manner. See, when we celebrate Navratri, we celebrate different roles and values. And when we celebrate the different roles, we know that goddesses can be nurturers, goddesses can be destructive also when it comes to protecting nature or protecting their loved ones. So, from creating to destroying is something that women can do, and that destruction is only through protection or for protection, and that is something that helps shape an organization in a very different manner. So this whole process of empowering through leadership can actually help the organization take a new dynamic path which can evolve the organization on many different levels. And we know that there are different domains, there are different functions, and whenever women are brought out in these roles, they can add more layers to these domains. They can have a more balanced approach, a more structured approach. And we are going to see today how different women, specifically Indian women, have contributed to different organizations and what kind of changes they have brought. So, why this empowerment is important and why it matters to us is because uh, we are working towards having greater accountability and transparency in all forms. We as compliance professionals specifically want greater transparency. But to have greater transparency, the decision making process also has to be rational and also has to be well thought out. So, to ensure that there are better decisions happening, there is proper risk management, there is risk evaluation, risk mitigation, everything happening at the same time. And at the same time, the organization is not becoming a stagnant organization and is growing continuously. So all this can happen when there are diverse perspectives brought in by including women from different sections of society, by including more women also on the teams. Then for risk management, as we all know, it's not a simple domain where you're simply managing risks. Identifying risks, managing risks, mitigating them, ensuring that in the long run and in the short term also, that there is greater stability to the organization becomes very important. And this also happens when you have a mixture of people in terms of gender, in terms of social status on your board or on your leadership team. And when you're talking about any organization, as people from financial backgrounds, we are always aware of the fact that we are working towards ensuring that an organization has perpetual succession, has long-term stability, and that growth or stability that is required in any organization can come when there are better decisions, better risk management, better thought processes, greater innovation happening on the ground level. And that can happen only when it is propagated from the top. A culture is set from the top, not from the bottom. And if the top management or the leadership of the organization does not believe in a particular culture, then the employees of the organization definitely will not follow that culture. So the culture setting has to happen from the top. And when proper practices are there in any organization, they can always ensure that the culture is set right. And when once the culture is set, it becomes part of the way of living or the way of working. And you don't need rules or regulations to ensure that a way of living is followed by people. So culture setting or identifying what is important for an organization to grow and sustain the right way is very important. Now we'll go through a few case studies where women have led transformation in organizations and how they have shaped up the organizations with their different thinking. So the first case study is of a person of Indian origin, Indra Nui, who has headed PepsiCo for quite a long time. And she is probably one of the first women who was recognized globally, who came from an Indian background. And her leadership has been transformational for PepsiCo. So, with her at the helm of affairs, the transformation that Pepsi underwent was humongous, because we all know that the two brands which are recognized world over for soft drinks are Coca-Cola and Pepsi, and they have always competed against each other. Many times they have openly competed against each other and openly targeted each other because their sales depend on the other person not selling enough. And Indra Nooyi, when she came to Pepsi, they were in the middle of a huge crisis and they were facing tough competition from Coca-Cola. So when she first came, she decided that strategic changes are important and Pepsi needed to have a better product diversity and a better product portfolio. So she started focusing on adding new products into the product mix of Pepsi. So it was not just the basic Pepsi. She started adding more and more products in terms of beverages, in terms of the food products that they sell. And then she recognized the need to lead the transformation by entering into newer countries. So by limiting Pepsi to a few countries, they were not utilizing their full potential. So what Pepsi started doing was they started manufacturing in many smaller countries and selling in those countries. So at a time when many companies were afraid of going into a different country and setting up manufacturing units in specifically Asian or African countries, PepsiCo decided that they would go into Asian and African countries and set up production over there so that they can sell directly into these markets. Along with that, they also recognize the need to diversify the product on the basis of the tastes and preferences of a particular country. And this particular thing which they implemented led to a huge difference, because Pepsi was able to attract local audiences more and sell more in those local markets. And at the same time, they also tried to acquire local brands which were influencing the decisions in those particular markets. So this strategic reconstruction that they did allowed them to become a competitor to Coca-Cola again, which had stopped for quite some time. Now, the second thing that Indira Nooyi did was she also ensured that innovation is not stopped. So, in the entire transformation that was happening, the restructuring that was happening when they were starting new products or entering new markets or producing in newer markets, she tried to ensure that in every single stage there is innovation that is happening. The product processes are much better, and the entire focus was on prioritizing environmental sustainability. So even though their operations grew in terms of scale, but the way that PepsiCo tried to reduce their wastages, improve their production functions, improve efficiency, and reduce costs in the process, and at the same time ensure that the damage being done to the environment is minimized, is something that we all need to learn from. And along with this, one more thing that PepsiCo did was they emphasized on corporate social responsibility. So even though it was not something that was mandated at that point of time, they recognized the need to contribute to society. This so corporate social responsibility is something that we know because of Companies Act, and we have been following it just because it is made mandatory. But it is something that has been in our country for the longest time. It was started by Tatas in the 1860s when they started their first plant, first mill in Nagpur. And it has just been something that has been passed on from generation to generation and made mandatory in the last 20 odd years. But it is something that has been part of the Indian culture, which she took to a multinational company and spread all over the world. So it is something that we all should be proud of, that a concept that came from India has gone to the world and has been followed and implemented by people the world over. And an organization like PepsiCo took the lead uh, because it was headed by Indra Nooyi at that point of time. And they started focusing on the smaller areas where they were manufacturing and producing their products, so that they could deal with the issues in those areas and ensure that there is societal and environmental protection that is happening in these particular locations through their different initiatives. Now, the second person that I want to talk to you about is Nainalal Kidwai, who was with HSBC Bank. So, the transformation that has happened in the Indian banking sector has been huge. And we are all aware of the way in which our banking system has evolved in the last 2 decades. Now, the most important thing that we have been able to achieve is financial inclusion. So at HSBC, again, financial inclusion initiatives were led by Nainalal Kidwai, and they expanded their operations to communities where there was no focus. So many banking operations in our country are limited to certain communities, and there are minority communities who are in areas which are usually not accessible, where these services are not at all provided. So HSBC had this initiative where they reached out to these communities and tried to include them in financial operations. Along with this, the digital banking technologies, which became a pilot project for financial technologies, or fintech as we call it today, was something that was adopted massively by HSBC India. And the way HSBC was able to streamline all the processes and improve how customer experience was given, it was something very different for the banking system in our country, because we are used to, or rather we were used to, a very traditional banking model where we believe that banks have to provide certain services, and bank need not focus on giving good experience to a customer. That was the model that was shattered by HSBC when they decided to streamline these operations and provide digital banking services so that customers could log in from their computer and just do their banking activities with ease from their houses. And the entire experience, or the interface that was created, it was very simple to use, which even now many banks are not able to achieve. Along with this, HSBC again created a very strong culture where corporate social responsibility was taken very seriously. And the focus of all these activities was on engaging the community with the sole aim of developing the entire banking system in a sustainable manner. So, the focus on financial inclusion and digital banking led to a system where the entire process was streamlined in such a way that these activities could be sustained on their own, and there was no additional measure that was required to continue these activities. So these activities became the cornerstone for the transformation in the Indian banking system that we have witnessed, and these also became a stepping stone for the transformation that we have seen, which has come through payment gateways and payment wallets, or digital wallets, as we now know them. So, without HSBC India leading the way, for financial inclusion or digital banking, we wouldn't have seen this evolution of fintech or banking 4.0 that we are witnessing today. And I think we are very privileged that a person like Nainal Kidwai was there to lead HSBC India and to give us this kind of an initiative, which spread very fast. So because HSBC is limited to certain cities in the country, they are not operating all over. Um, Many banks were impressed by what they were able to achieve, and they tried to replicate these models of financial inclusion and digital banking. To name a few, Standard Chartered Bank, ICICI Bank, HDFC Bank were massively impressed by the work done, and they were able to replicate these on a larger scale than HSBC India. And since the replication happened, it created a very strong framework in the country for the kind of things that we are able to do today. The UPI system, which is being appreciated the world over, is in existence because of a strong foundation laid by the likes of Nainal Kidwai and HSBC India. Moving to the next case study, uh, this Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw of Biocon. So we are all aware of the great work that was done with uh, the revolution that Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw started. And uh, this particular person had failed multiple times in initiatives because she was a student of science and she was a student of biology, and she was in the process of making drugs, but her few experiments in the beginning, they failed, but eventually she was able to find something just because of her curiosity, and she was able to convert that into a massive venture, which was, and as we all know today, is Biocon. So this particular company, which was one of its kind in the country, uh, Biocon is known for the way they think, the way they innovate, the way they create their products, and the way they govern the entire organization. And the focus has never been on profiteering. The focus has always been providing the facilities to their customers, and that too at an affordable price. So when Kiran Mazumdar Shaw came into this particular domain, and Biocon started creating products, they revolutionized the entire system that was there. And the way they innovated the products, they were the only company in the entire country making products in the way they were from the protein serums. So Biocon actually created a new market in the country, and they were able to inspire many others to come into this field. And from the time it started, Biocon has focused on ethical governance. Now, many times we see that the rules that are given are followed on the basis of the law that is present. But in certain companies, even when they are not mandated by law to follow certain things, they end up creating the best practices for themselves. And this kind of a culture setting where people are not focused or fixated on following laws, and they simply want to do what is the best thing, is something that is very important. Because once the culture sets in a country that the law is not required to mandate things, but just by recognizing that this is something that is beneficial to the community, this is something that is beneficial to society, and this is something that will do good, or this is the right thing to do, it helps organizations to think right. And this creates a culture where organizations become trustees of society rather than being people who earn from society. So this ethical governance which was there, the transparency and the accountability which has been there with Biocon from the beginning, led them to enable this system where they could provide products, that is medications, to consumers at affordable prices, and ensure that their products are accessible to everyone, which is why they are highly respected in their domain. Now I'm moving to professionals like us. So from Apollo Hospital Group, the executive vice
Jyoti ma'am,
chairperson. Yes.
are you showing slides? Because we can see only first slide only.
Yes, ma'am. One second. Let me just.
Yeah.
Ma'am, are the slides visible now?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I was talking about Preetha Reddy, who is the executive vice chairperson of Apollo Hospital, and she is a chartered accountant. Now, having a professional who is from the compliance domain, or who has an understanding of compliance, and bringing this professional into a top leadership role has a very different impact on how things are being done by an organization. Now, when Preetha Reddy became the executive vice chairperson uh, of Apollo Hospitals Group, that led to a massive change in the way hospitals or hospital groups function in the entire country. So, Apollo Hospitals is highly respected and highly reputed in the entire country, and they have a big chain of not just hospitals but also pharmacies, which has become a very well structured and a very um, good model of how pharmacies and hospitals can function in a large geographical region with a similar structure and a similar governance framework. So, the governance framework of Apollo hospitals, being from the healthcare domain, was set by Preetha Reddy. So, they focused on transparent practices and ensuring that there is trust from all stakeholders. Now, the growth that we have seen in Apollo is not just limited to our country, but they also have significant presence in the entire world. So they are not limited to the Indian subcontinent, but they have spread out as well. But their presence in tier two, tier three cities has been growing in the last 5 years or so. And they have been at the helm of affairs when it comes to the transformation that we are seeing in the medical field, specifically the pharmaceutical stores that we see. So the entire operation of Apollo groups has been streamlined by the strong and uh, very streamlined financial management, uh, in spite of being in multiple locations, which is usually a big problem. The reporting is highly transparent, and along with that, the confidence of the investors is quite high because of the governance practices that are put in place. Another example is Anjali Bansal, who is former chairperson of Dena Bank. She's a company secretary, and she has been instrumental in making sure that there are multiple changes which happen in the banking system, specifically with respect to the governance and risk management practices. So she was the first person to chair Dena Bank, but she guided them through a time when there were various problems that were cropping up in the system, and she ensured that the governance structure was implemented in the right way, and these challenges were um, no longer a big concern for them. Along with this, they were able to focus on ensuring that compliance became better, and the entire process of decision making in the boardroom was not a mere matter of compliance, but actually something that was taken very seriously and something that was implemented as a matter of uh, practice rather than a matter of ticking the boxes. Now, being in the financial sector, risk management becomes an important aspect, and specifically in the banking sector, it is something that is very important. So with her background as a company secretary, they were able to establish better systems to ensure that the risk management in terms of financial risk and operational risk was minimized. So overall, during her tenure, there was a lot of stability in the bank's performance, that too when there was a crisis going on. And at the same time, there was complete compliance to governance rules, and overall operational efficiencies increased. Now, the last example that I have today is of Soma Mandal, who's the chairperson of SAIL Authority of India Limited. And she is a cost accountant by profession. And she is one of the very few women who have been leading an organization in the steel industry. And she's contributed tremendously to the growth of SAIL. And overall, because of her background as a cost accountant, she's been able to ensure that the cost management practices are implemented properly and there are greater operational efficiencies. Overall, governance structure is focused on compliance, transparency, and better risk management. And at the same time, being in the steel industry, SAIL, although it is a PSU, and Soma Mandal has been able to ensure that the initiative has been taken to modernize the steel manufacturing processes so that they are able to compete with private players, which is a big task and a big obstacle for many organizations today. So, with all these practices that she put in place, SAIL has been able to become better in terms of the profitability, in terms of the sustainable practices that are there, and overall operations of SAIL have been streamlined while ensuring that corporate governance practices are followed by the entire organization. Now, in all these women that we've seen today, what is common and what are the common strategies that they have adopted? So the first thing that you see with all these women is when they are at the top, when they are leading organizations, they prioritize ethics and values. The focus is on creating long-term value rather than ensuring that there is profit being made in the short term. And uh, the point where I mentioned before also, creating a culture which is set from the top and ensuring that the culture goes to the bottom so that it becomes part and parcel of life rather than a rule which is to be followed by people, is something that comes from this ethical decision making or this value creation that is being focused on by these women. The other thing that women that we've seen have been able to do is emphasize the role of companies in terms of the social responsibility that they undertake, that is CSR. So having better CSR initiatives, creating a positive impact on the society, on the environment, and having better governance, having greater emphasis on compliance is something that all these women have been able to do. Along with this, there is greater focus on better practices, sustainable practices, innovation, and well-being of all stakeholders. So when we talk about sustainability, today sustainability is something that cannot be excluded from any activity, and it is an integral part of all the activities that an organization does. So ensuring that all organizations improve their practices so that they are sustainable. So value addition happens, but value addition happens in such a way that it will continue to happen for the next few decades. And overall, the impact of the activities on society, on people, on the planet is minimized in terms of the adverse effects, is something that contributes to greater sustainability. So these things that are brought into the focus by women leaders are something that we need to bring into all our organizations. And along with that, all these leaders are very good at risk management. So they have improved the risk management practices because they want to ensure that all the potential threats are mitigated and there is greater stability in the organization. So when we look at all these strategies that are adopted for better or greater corporate governance, we see just one thing. Uh, in all this, we see that all these women are putting together a great set of values which can be taken forward as proper compliance with what is being recommended by the law. So instead of doing something which will tick a box, or ensuring that certain amount is spent on CSR activities, or certain things are done because the law says so, is something that is not happening. They are taking two steps extra in every single thing to ensure that the organization grows. They are doing something extra to ensure that the organization has a positive impact on everyone, and they are not fixated on ticking boxes. They are focused on making the organization better. So when the focus is on the right thing, you see that the governance structure becomes better. You see that the organization does better. You see that the people do better, and you see that society perceives them as a better organization. So all the organizations that I listed today, they have a very positive brand image. And whenever we take the name of any of these organizations, we always have something positive, whether we are their consumers or not. Even if I don't like Pepsi, I will still admire their practices because of the kind of positive impact they have created on society and the kind of name that they have created for themselves. So, even though we are not directly related to any of these organizations, because of the leadership that these women have shown and the kind of practices that they have initiated and they have streamlined and made sustainable, we know that irrespective of whether the women who have started these practices, whether they are leading these initiatives today or not, these initiatives are going to continue because they have become a part and parcel of these organizations. Now, what are the challenges that women face in corporate governance? So, although we are talking about empowerment of women, the biggest problem that we face is societal barriers. So, limiting the roles or opportunities that are available for women is something that is deep rooted and something that we need to get rid of, because this is the bias that stops women from being promoted. It stops women from taking up leadership opportunities. It stops people from giving women leadership opportunities. Second is the gender bias. So many times, the gender bias will impact the hiring practices of the organization. So if the right person is available and that person is stereotyped and not selected in the hiring process itself, how will that person get the opportunity to grow in the organization, get promoted in the organization, or eventually make an impact on the organization? So the hiring practices, the promotion practices, and the decision making processes of the organization should be gender bias free, to ensure that something as trivial as gender doesn't impact the organization's potential. And the last thing that has challenged women all over is limited representation. So we see very few women being at the helm of affairs in organizations, and that is something that becomes a systemic barrier, because many times we don't have role models to look up to. Slowly we are seeing that that is going away, but still there is limited representation. And when you have representation, when you see someone achieving something, overall it becomes something that leads to aspirations for a younger generation, so that they can also do the same thing. So today we see many sportswomen leading in the world from India, and that is something that will be an aspiration to a lot of girls to take up sports. But the kind of representation that we wish to have, or we desire to have in the corporate world, we still do not have, and that is something that limits most of us from taking up leadership responsibilities as well. So what should we do now if we want to achieve empowerment through governance? What is it that we can do? So the first thing that we need is increased representation. So wherever possible, we have to get rid of the biases, ensure diversity on the boards of the organization. We need to have equitable representation of women. We cannot be asking for equal representation, but equitable representation is something that we can always look out for. And again, having a provision in law to have a certain number of women directors is not going to help. It is something that needs to come as a practice. It is something that should be deep rooted, and it is something that should uh, become what is part of the culture of the organization. So this representation will help in the long run. Second thing is, if required and whenever required, proper mentoring and training for leadership is something that is required for women so that they can grow and advance their careers. Uh, as I mentioned, that biases in the hiring and promotion processes need to be removed. It is simply not about removing the biases. It is also about empowering the women to become capable to do these things. So all these leaders who have led organizations, they were given the right kind of opportunities. And whenever they got the opportunities, they were fearless and brave enough to take those opportunities. So looking up to them, we should also feel that we ourselves have to figure out how to get trained, how to get the right kind of mentorship, and how to empower ourselves to advance in the career of our choice. And the last thing is that there are policy changes which are required. So the policy changes are required to address gender bias. They are required to promote diversity so that there is greater inclusivity in the corporate environment, and there is greater inclusivity and diversity in governance structures of the organization. So this is something that is required at the primary level, and this is something that is required at this instance so that we can grow and we can change how our organizations look like, how our companies look like, and how our future is going to look like. So I would just like to conclude by mentioning that we have seen 6 examples, and there are multiple examples out there in the world today. Women trying to lead organizations, maybe small, maybe big. There are so many women in our country today running their own businesses, mostly SMEs, and doing so well. So these women are also leading the transformation in corporate governance. Although the governance structure is different, but they are still leading it. And there are many examples like this probably around us, and it is just a matter of looking at them and identifying them and understanding and trying to help them or uplift them in any way, or empowering them in any way and supporting them so that they get the opportunity to grow. So if we can all do that, if we can all as women support each other, help each other grow and learn and train ourselves, then there is nothing like that. So the culture is not just within the organization, the culture is also outside the organization. If we want to get rid of the biases, if we want to level the playing field, it is going to happen only and only if we support each other and we come together and understand what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are, and help each other get rid of the weaknesses. So forming those bonds, creating those friendships, and creating that culture where we support each other is very important. So I would like to conclude with this. I would like to thank uh, you all for listening to me. If there are any questions, I can take the questions now.
I guess there are no questions now.
Okay.
So thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your informative session. Thank you for all attendees for their active participation. And now I officially conclude the session is over. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you all for attending.